All right, welcome to the Truversion Rental Podcast. This is your go-to destination for all things related to Airbnb short-term rental arbitrage for the everyday person. My name is Jamal Lawson, and I am thrilled, excited to embark on this journey with you. If you are a seasoned veteran in the short-term rental industry or you're just getting started, this is for you. You're at the right place. We're going to provide you a lot of insights that are going to lead to a lot of success in this dynamic industry. Each week, we're going to have an in-depth discussion with like-minded individuals who are in the short-term rental industry or just getting started. So I'm excited today. I have my guest, Christopher Dorsey, who happens to be one of my good friends, childhood friends. Chris Dorsey, welcome to the podcast, man. I appreciate you. Welcome.
Hey, Jamal. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Happy that you're here. You're here too, man. So, Chris, let's dive straight into it. You know, obviously, I've known you for a while, but I want to share. This is about sharing your story, sharing your journey. You're a 17-year college basketball coach, and you're a real estate investor simultaneously, man. So there's a lot to talk about, a lot we can share. Tell us a little about you, man, your background, you know, how you got into coaching and how you correlated that with real estate and Airbnb.
Yeah, well, I've been coaching for 17 years. And, you know, my first into real estate was I bought a primary home, FHA loan. And in the basement, it was unfinished. So I just decided to finish the basement. And I added 3 rooms in the basement. And then I started renting out those rooms to foreign exchange high school students, and didn't know what I was doing at the time, but you know, I realized that I was getting some income every month from those students. So that was kind of my into real estate. And I guess now, you know, looking back on it, I guess that's what you call house hacking. And I didn't know it at the time.
Right.
But then from there, you know, I started getting more property. And I did long-term rentals. But this was just on the side of my full-time job, which is coaching college basketball. So I've kind of been juggling both for the last 17 years. And, you know, you just introduced me over the past couple years to short-term rentals, mid-term rentals. And that's kind of what I'm really focused on right now outside of my coaching position.
You got started house hacking, which is a phenomenal way to get started in real estate. But like that transition into short-term rentals, and we'll get into that. But like any advice or any suggestions of like, you know, if you can go back to your younger self, like what to do differently or why did you get into that as a coach?
Yeah, I would say start sooner. You know, the short-term rentals have been really good over the past couple of years. When I was doing long-term renting, the income per month wasn't great. You know, I was making a couple to a few $100s per month. And if something broke, you know, I would have to repair it and I would lose my monthly income. And then from there, I kind of started focusing on creative financing, and I did lease purchases for a while, and that was good. The income was a little better because with a lease purchase, you at least get a down payment, a deposit towards the purchase of the house. So that lump sum of money was good, but the monthly cash flow was still kind of the same. And then, you know, in the last couple of years, I kind of went to short-term rentals, and the income was so much better. So it was a great supplement for, you know, coaches. We just don't get paid much until you're at a really high level. So that the income supplement was great with the short-term rentals, and I kind of accelerated with my purchases once I started getting into short-term rentals.
So you were able to increase your cash flow through short-term rentals, supplemented, you know, your cash flow in your investment while you're doing something that you love as far as coaching until you're, you know, to support your income and provide.
Yeah, right. And you know, I didn't know anything about business credit or business loans.
Right.
And, you know, because I started this short-term rental business, I was able to get financing from the bank very easily, and that kind of helped accelerate my portfolio.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. That's awesome. I mean, you're kudos to you for thinking outside the box, right? Not just being like, okay, hey, I'm a coach, but like how think what ways, what things, what resources do you have to be able to provide something else, right? So present day, how many homes do you have?
I currently have two short-term rentals at the moment.
Two short-term rentals. And so let's talk. Let's obviously, and for anybody that's watching, a short-term rental is any a place where a guest or a tenant, right, could stay at your property for any amount of days, weeks, or months, typically. So, like in whatever city, it's typically 28 days. Anything more than 28 days is considered a long-term or a mid-term guest. If they stay less than 28 days, it's considered a short-term. So that's particular depending on the market. So you're having guests, travelers stay at your house for any amount of weeks or days, correct?
Correct. I'm currently, using two main platforms, and that's Airbnb and VRBO. And my typical guest on average stays anywhere from 3 days to a week. But I
Got it.
have had monthly stays in my property, which has been really good.
Right. So let's talk about, obviously there's pros and cons, there's good, bad, and the ugly to any type of business. So what challenges are you having? You got two properties operating as a short-term rental. Are you doing this on your own, or like do you have a team support? Like, because you're coaching too, like how are you doing all this?
Right. So I have two properties. I bought two within the past 2 years. Most recently got my second property about 5 months ago.
Mhm.
And my first property, I was managing it on my own. I still manage it on my own, but now I have a cleaning team that I use for my first property, which is very helpful. I have a handyman who will come in and fix any damages or anything that needs repaired for that first property. But the second property that I just picked up, I'm doing it all on my own. Like I don't have a cleaner for that property right now. I do have a handyman that swings by every time I need him. But the time that it takes me and my wife to clean that second property is the con that I'm facing right now with having two properties. It's, kind of the management of answering messages over Airbnb and VRBO combined with cleaning every time a guest leaves. And right now we're almost fully booked. So I'm at least cleaning, 3 to 4 times a week that second property, which is really time consuming at the moment.
Right. So you're doing, everything, guest communication, cleaning, turning it over, like getting it ready for the next guest and running your job. So it's busy, right? So the benefit, you were saying the benefit is like there's increased cash flow from a long-term tenant, but it is still occupying your time. And I know a lot of investors want, they invest so they can spend less time, right? Do you feel like, what do you think you need to be able, like, is to scale, to grow? Like, what's the future look like for you? Like, what's the goal for this? I know you have two properties, but what's the goal for you? And what do you feel like you would need to get there?
Yeah, well, the first thing is I know I'm going to take the cleaning team that I have right now for my first property and put them into my, have them clean my second property that I have.
Mhm.
But I really wanted to start off cleaning myself so I can understand, that process and, how long it typically would take to clean the property, what type of guest I've been bringing into the home. So now that I have a feel for those types of things, I plan on taking my cleaning team and, sending them to the second property as well.
Mhm.
But I think to accelerate, to keep moving forward with getting more property is, tapping into that business line of credit that I have. Fortunately with the coaching, I'm able to use that money to, get by with my personal life.
Mhm.
And I've been able to save all the income that I'm getting from my two short-term rental properties. So
Right.
combine that monthly income from the short-term rentals with the business line of credit, I plan on using those two assets to purchase, a third, fourth, and hopefully fifth rental property within the next year or two.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. So yeah, you're definitely going to achieve that phenomenal goal to continue. So you want to continue to purchase, continue to scale, use the line of credit, use leverage to continue to buy, and still operate these properties as a short-term rental, right? So as an investor, like how much, how helpful is it when you look, I mean, at the property, when you look at the asset before you choose to purchase it, how much, how helpful is it to know that you are going to use it as an Airbnb? Like when you're looking at, hey, making that decision, like how helpful is it to be able to have the skills to operate as a short-term rental for you?
That's really all that I look at is, will this property be able to make income as a short-term rental? And, sometimes I also look at it as if I have to utilize it as a long-term rental as well. So my townhouse that I just purchased, they have an HOA involved, and
Okay.
I'm running into some conflicts with the HOA, but
Okay.
at the moment it's still being rented as a short-term rental, but I may have to pivot and do a long-term rental. So I think it's important that you look at all the exit strategies when you're looking to purchase a home, because you never know what's going to happen with the economy. HOA,
Hmm.
Airbnb or VRBO could shut down, and then what would you do, right? So it's always important to prepare for the what if, and
Hmm.
that's kind of my process when I'm looking to purchase a property.
Oh yeah, 1,000%. And that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up because I know there's Airbnb is marketed, it's a brand, it's a trend, right? 2020, 2021. Everybody in there that I know is like, hey, I'm gonna do Airbnb. But it's actually the same process. Like if somebody is buying a house, and I agree with you, like it needs to make sense for not only an Airbnb, but it should make sense for whatever strategy, alternative strategy, whether it's long term, right, lease option, midterm. In my opinion, I would suggest when I look at properties, even when I do arbitrage, for me doing arbitrage, it has to make sense as a midterm, or I'm not doing it, right? Because anything can happen. Short term, the market could go down. We could have another pandemic. We could have anything can happen in that scenario. Same thing for you with buying. But if it makes sense as a midterm or a long term as well, then you have a backup strategy.
Mhm.
Um,
So I have a question. So the property that I just purchased, I purchased it as a short-term rental, and it just so happened that my first guest stayed for 2 months.
right.
And I'm not sure what the difference is in determining, is this a short-term rental or is this a midterm rental? Is it how you set up the property? Is it the staging? Is it the things that the guests have access to over the course of their stay? So when you say you look at it as, I may do a short term, but I need to prepare for a midterm, what's the difference there in the preparation of the property?
Yeah. So good question. So two things. When I look at it, like short term is you're looking at it. What's the total revenue that you can collect for people staying for a couple of days at a time, typically, right? One night, 2 nights, 3 nights at a time. That cost is per night is typically going to be high. So you're going to have a higher total revenue. So I'm like, when I look at it as a midterm, I look at it, I'm renting this a month at a time or 2 months at a time, and they get a lower rate, right? So if somebody is staying at your property for $150 a night, but if they're staying for 3 months, you might rent it for $90 a night, right? But they're staying for 3 months. So what does that price look like? Does that pencil out? Does that make sense? As
Okay.
far as like, you don't have to stage it differently. I don't think it's too much different in staging. You still want it to be cozy, comfortable, attractive for somebody to want to stay. I think midterm, it's more like where is it located, right? Is it located near workforce? Is it located near hospitals, military bases? If it's going to be monthly stays, who's going to be your clientele that's going to stay there? You need to know that. You need to have relationships. You need to know how you're going to get your clientele or how you're going to market on Airbnb. And if it's short term, who's going to be your clientele, but they're going to be staying for a couple of nights at a time.
Okay. So the staging necessarily doesn't change, but the
Not
location
direct.
of right, the location of the property and the type of guests that you may have and the overall monthly cash flow is kind of what will determine if it's a short-term or mid-term rental.
Yeah.
Correct? Okay.
Yes. You're gonna get less in most cases. Not all cases. You're gonna get less cash flow as a midterm than short term. In most cases, some cases like there's certain scenarios where you can get a good midterm tenant. You can get insurance placements. You can get medical or corporate employees that are going to pay a premium to stay at a nice house. So you want to know your market too. Like in your scenario, and I know a little bit about your scenario with the townhome. If there's an HOA in place, sometimes the HOA allows like 6-month leases. You might be able to get a furnished rental for 6 months and charge a premium and you can just do 6-month leases at a time. That might be something to look at. Every market's different, but you want to be able to get creative. What questions do you have about short term, about arbitrage, about Airbnb? Like, how can I help you?
Yeah, not necessarily arbitrage, but I'm a property owner and I've never really looked into arbitrage until you've introduced it to me. And, I'm studying your stuff on a daily basis. But as a property owner, my question is like right now, a lot of my time is taken up with the second property. So what would it look like um, for me to bring in a management team or someone to manage my property for me? I know you do that as well. So if I was going to have you take over my second property, for example, what would those steps look like and what would that entail for you to do?
So what would you're talking about in pretty much probably a co-host situation, right? So what they call, like, you hear like, hey, I got a co-host, right?
Okay.
And so there's different levels of co-hosts, right? And so for me, like what I do in some cases is offer a pretty much fully turnkey automated situation for the property. Because I'm a property owner as well, and I understand hey, like you're saying, like there's a lot of time. I don't want to have to deal with it. So what it looks like is we take care of all guest communication. All guest communication is taken care of. All pricing management, reservation management is taken care of. All cleaning is taken care of. So we pretty much hire a cleaner and make sure the turnovers are done. We communicate with the guests. We secure the property, have eyes on the property 24/7. We make sure the property is secure. We price it appropriately. We do dynamic pricing, daily management of the pricing, so we get the most revenue. And we typically we would only call the property owner in case of like maintenance issues. That makes sense?
Okay.
And so
yeah.
it relieves you of like spending hours. I used to clean too, right? Like clean my properties. It relieves you of cleaning the properties. It relieves you of looking at the guest communication and dealing with questions. We put those systems in place to automate that. And in some cases, a co-host could design. Like if you don't want to design, you're not familiar. I typically get involved with the design, the staging, the setup, and I found this out, that the way you set it up is really important. Like most of your work is done in the beginning. Like, and like you set up your property is pretty good. You set it up pretty good and you design them pretty good and you list it pretty good. Then it makes it easier on the back end.
That's probably my biggest question because I want to relieve the time that I'm spending in the Airbnb properties. Because when I was renting long term, right, I may have heard from a tenant once every few months. But now, it's a day-to-day basis where I'm constantly getting bookings and I'm responding to people via Airbnb Messenger and VRBO. And it's not a hassle, but it does take up some time. And the one thing that I would like to do is relieve my time, right? Find a co-host like you just mentioned and basically, get the mailbox money just from owning the property and letting the co-host or the manager take care of all the day-to-day operations. And
Correct.
That's been the biggest thing I've been trying to figure out is how can I hand off, these day-to-day operations that are consuming my time with the property. And, a co-host, it seems like would be the best route for me to go because, my main job is coaching and, I work 70 hours a week with coaching. So for me to scale to more property, I think it's going to be important that I hand off the day-to-day operations, to someone like you or a co-host that could take, those few hours a day that's taking away from my W-2 job.
Yeah.
And I can focus on my main career while still investing in rental property.
Oh yeah. Yeah. 1,000%. And that, I think co-hosting or short-term rental management, I like, or operational management, I like to call it, because property management is one thing, but managing the short-term rental operations, I think it makes sense for anybody in certain situations, like yourself, like you got a main job and you don't want to deal with it. Or you have a real estate portfolio and you haven't have the time or dived into the hospitality business, right? Because at the end of the day, I think the biggest thing, and I think you know this too, because you've done you put up 2 properties yourself. It's investing and buying properties is a totally different business than hospitality, right? Dealing with customers, dealing with guests, dealing with hospitality, dealing with the cleaning, dealing with the check-in and check-out. So like if you have somebody that's focused on that, it's going to free up your time. So yeah, no, for sure. I definitely agree. It makes sense for somebody like you. It makes sense for somebody that's in the investment or somebody that wants to learn along the way. Cool, man. So where do we go from here? You're buying a couple properties, you want to get another line of credit. Like, where do we go from here? How do you foresee yourself using Airbnb? Do you see yourself diving into other aspects or just continue to buy and just put them all in that short-term, midterm?
Yeah, like it's funny as we're on this call right now, I just got a booking for one of my properties, and if I could scale to 10, like that, I think that would be my goal. If I could get 2 a year, I'd be happy with that. I just did it. And I think I can do it again, with those resources that I have. So the goal is to probably try to get to 10 as fast as I can.
Okay.
And focus on short-term rentals and midterm rentals. And if I have to make a pivot somewhere and, adjust to long-term or do creative financing, sell lease options again, I can always do that. But I'm really interested in the co-host thing because as a property owner with another career, I really don't want to lose my time as I grow with my properties, right? So I'm just thankful, that you have the resources of being a co-host, and I know you can do long distance and out of Ohio where you're based. And,
right.
Just having those resources and someone like you to talk to and learn from, I'm just super appreciative of it. And, I know moving forward, you're going to help me. And, maybe this conversation that we have can help other property owners like myself. But definitely just want to continue to grow and, scale to at least 10 properties within the next few years.
Yeah, no, that's phenomenal, man. That's, there's a lot of people I think in your situation, growth is key. 10 properties is a good, solid number. And if anybody is trying to grow to 10 properties, like it's a win-win, right? So, I'm trying to grow and help and, grow my portfolio to 10 properties at the same time, helping you out. But I'm a believer in focus on what you know, right? And so if the property owner is buying, then you have a co-host or an operator that's operating. So did you get the max returns? So this is phenomenal, man. This is great. I appreciate it. I think that we share some valuable information, learn a little bit more about you, coaching and doing Airbnb short-term rentals, and learning more about the co-host management process. And let's see if we can find you a co-host in the future. So I appreciate your time today, Chris, and I definitely appreciate it. So that's a wrap, guys, for today's episode on the Truversion Rental Podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation and could be very insightful for where you're at. If you like today's episode and you like this content, at some point, subscribe to the podcast, like, share, and comment. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, guys.